Usury is illegal. So in Christian nations, lending money for an interest rate was illegal. So because it was illegal for the Christians, who did the lending? The Jews. So there was Christians who could lend for 0% or didn't lend at all. And then these people called the Jews would come over and start lending money. They would start charging money. And in a couple generations, guess what would happen to the economy? The Jews owned everything. And then guess what the king did? Rounded them up and threw them out of the country. Then they go to the next country, and what would they do? Same thing. And what would that king do? Round them up, kick them out of the country. This went on for thousands of years. This is why the Jews in history have had no country. Because the king would have, they would say no usury, no money lending, and they would start the money lending, they would start the central bank to compete with the king would kick them out. They go to the next country, do it again. So this has happened over and over and over again because this quote right here from Napoleon, he was showed the compound interest tables, and he said in a very short amount of time, compound interest would eat up every piece of property in France. In fact, I'm going to show you how powerful compound interest is. Very scary thing. And there's a reason why it was illegal. Illegal, illegal, illegal.
This is Proverbs 22:7. It says, the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. All right, shalom, shalom. I want to give all praises, glory, honor, and power that's due to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shah, Bahashem Rakakadash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles at Great Millstone, those who rule well and who I learned this truth from. Salutation to the brothers stiffly pushing this one truth, and all sincerity and diligence, risking your lives and freedoms to do so. Shalom to the rest of the elect. All right, as we all await the second Exodus coming quickly by the hands of Lord Yahweh Shah. This is your brother Rakaga Bar. All right, and I want to be going into this lesson. All right, touching on this this debt, this debt-based system that we live in. All right, and how the elites, all right, the wealthy banking families, all right, which are those ish, the small hats. All right, they lend with usury, and ultimately this is how they've been able to amass their riches, their wealth, and this is the reason why, you can never seem to get out of the rut, because this is a debt-based society, man, and this is why scriptures say, all right, in Proverbs 22:7, the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. Yeah, because of the fucking debt. You can't buy shit without these devils putting a tax on it. You know what I'm saying? Putting a tax on it, man, that you got to pay back. And really, all right, debt is supposed to be forgiven. After a certain period of time. If you can't pay that debt off, biblically, all right, after 7 years, that debt is really to be wiped away, but this shows you how unrighteous and how unjust these devils are, because, they may have, I don't even, really understand if they have any debt forgiveness, because really they don't. There's certain loopholes and whatnot. You can fuck around and declare bankruptcy, but they may wipe it off of your credit report, but, you still may have to pay that back, but debt is supposed to be forgiven, every 7 years. Because if you wasn't able to afford it in the first place, you can't afford it now. You know what I'm saying? If I wasn't able to afford a $20,000 car, $25,000 car, how the fuck I'm going to afford the $15,000 in interest, that gets tacked on to that, man? You know what I'm saying? Which shows you this is a very unjust, system. Okay. And, ultimately, when you go into what's playing out in these times, all right, I've seen this popped up several times. The Trump administration, all right, they're talking about seasoned wages, pensions, and tax refunds to repay student loans. Okay, it says debt cannot be wiped away, but really it should be, because, again, if you can't pay it after a certain period of time, give motherfuckers a break. But that just goes to show you that that's not how they operate, man. This is a fucking unjust society. All right. And they can't pay their debt back, trillions of dollars in debt, but yet they expect you to cough up the money. But I did pull this up real quick. Okay, when you go into how often debt is forgiven occurs biblically, all right, it says in ancient Israel, debt forgiveness occurred twice, both at the end of a 7-year cycle, because 7, goes into completion. It says, and at the end of a 50-year cycle, which is the year of Jubilee. It says the first was a yearly debt remission called Shemitah, or sabbatical year, occurring every 7th year. The second was Jubilee, a more comprehensive reset including land returns and slave releases, which happened every 50 years. Okay. Every 7 years, creditors were required to release any debts owed by their neighbors or fellow Israelites. This practice aimed to prevent the accumulation of debt and provide a fresh start for those struggling financially, man. That's how it's supposed to be, All right, because, even when you go into lending usury, which we'll look that word up. It says interest at unreasonably high rates, the illegal action or practice of lending money at unreasonably high rates of interest. Now, the Israelites, being the Most High's chosen people, were able to lend usury, okay, upon the heathen, all right, because they are the Most High's chosen. But these people who are lending usury by unjust means today, they're not the chosen people of the Most High, man. All right, we as Israelites, we weren't allowed to lend usury upon our own people, but these devils, they lend usury on everybody, man. They don't give a damn. Here they are, the Edomites, lending usury upon other Edomites, showing you they don't give a damn about you people, man. All right. But yeah, it's lending money with high interest, high rates of interest. And it's the reason why you'll forever be a slave in this man's society, man. It's even to the point to where, you get dinged for paying off credit cards, man. Because they want you to have some type of credit. If you don't have a credit card and you're not making a minimum monthly payment or whatever, it could adversely affect your credit score, man. Because now you don't have you don't have established credit in their eyes, building that history. So now you fucking go to apply for a loan or a car or a house or some shit, and they're like, well, unfortunately, your credit history, blah 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 blah. But it's like, whole time they want you to be in debt. See, this is a debt-based society. All right. But it says Trump admin will seize wages, pensions, tax refunds to repay student loans. Debt cannot be wiped away. Those who default or refuse to pay their federal student loans could have their wages, federal pensions, and tax refunds garnished, the White House said Tuesday. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told reporters in her weekly briefing that the Trump administration will go after those who don't repay the loans instead of placing the burdens on taxpayers. The government can and will collect defaulted federal student loan debt by withholding money from borrowers, tax refunds, federal pensions, and even their wages, she said. All right. And I believe I've seen several videos. This would affect upwards of 5 million, peoples, man. Okay. All right. But really just doing this lesson to show you how unrighteous these devils are, because here they are in neck deep in debt, you know what I'm saying, about to go to war over the shits, but yet they still expect you to cough up, you know what I'm saying, cough up all this money, man, which really, should be forgiven at this point, Proverbs 28:8, it says, if you get, and it's the GNT, if you get rich by charging interest and taking advantage of people, your wealth will go to someone who is kind to the poor. Let's see. Yeah, and that's what's coming to you wicked elites, man, because, you know, you make it to where people can't live, man. Proverbs 28:8, he that by usury and unjust gain increaseth his substance, he shall gather it for him that will pity the poor. So you really gathering it for the elect, the Israelites, man. This is not your money anyways. You know, you've gotten this by rape, robbing, murder, through theft, you know, and you trying to make motherfuckers cough up shit they ain't got. You gonna be the one coughing, vomiting it up, man. Scriptures say, matter of fact, let's grab that. You know, he swallowed down riches. And you gonna vomit them back up because this shit don't belong to you, man. All right, it's like it, Job 20:15. He hath swallowed down riches, and he shall vomit them up again. The Most High shall cast them out of his belly. See, so that's what's gonna happen to the one who is currently the rich. They're about to lose, man. You know, this is the reason why we're moments away from a collapse. The Dow Jones, the stock market is plummeting damn near on a daily basis. Gold is at an all-time, I believe it's like $3,400 or something an ounce. You know, Klaus Schwab has stepped down. You know, he was the head of the WEF, the Economic Forum. Something major is about to go down, man. You know, all at the same time where they're trying to make it even harder for your ass to make ends meet and to live, man. Talking about garnishing checks and shit when motherfuckers can't even afford a carton of eggs, you know. But you know, this is all by design, all right. And you know, I really wanted to do this because, you know, these devils, by unjust means, you know, and usury, have been able to amass their wealth. All right. Matter of fact, let's look this up real quick. Yeah. I typed in, what is a debt-based society? A debt-based society is one where the primary mechanism for creating and distributing wealth is through debt and credit. Credit cards, debt is through the fucking roof. In this system, money is often created when the bank makes a loan and the borrower incurs debt that must be repaid. Yeah. Typically with interest, which is, you know, can go into usury. This system can lead to a situation where debt exceeds the amount of actual money in circulation, creating a constant drive for growth and potentially contributing to financial instability, man. You know, and that's where we are. Most people, especially dealing with these loans, these student loans, you know, most people debt outweighs their net worth, if you will, you know, or rather, you know, because your net worth is pretty much, you know, what you know, your assets, you know, minus your liabilities, if you will, you know, or your debt. Most people are upside down. Most people are upside down, man, because this is a debt-based society, you know, and this is why this society is about to crash, man. Scriptures speak about this place being in heavy debt. When you go into Habakkuk 2, okay, thick clay, all right, heavy debts, you know. Matter of fact, let's grab that, and then I'm gonna go ahead and close out. You know, this is all designed for this place to fall, man. You know, and they gonna try to give you a way out. It's gonna be that new digital currency system. That's why the cryptos and all that shit, because, you know, they're gonna try to give you a way out, you know, and it's gonna be by means of their new system, which is gonna make you have to take that chip. When it's all said and done, this is Habakkuk 2:6. Shall not all these take up a parable against him and a taunting proverb against him and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his. See, and I played that first video for you because that's how these damn Amalekites, all right, the small hats have increased that which is not theirs, man, by usury, going up, sending these central banks up, lending out money with all the usury on it, knowing you won't be able to pay the shit back. You know, the whole time they got the true wealth, the gold, you know, the silver, and they lend your ass a paperweight. See, this is all about to collapse, man. It says, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his, how long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay, which is the Hebrew ibatyat, which is heavy debts. See, heavy debts, man. This place is laden with heavy fucking debts that they can't even pay off. And you fucking trying to tell me that I got to pay my debts back? You can't even pay your shits back, man. But this is why, verse 7, shall they not rise up suddenly that shall bite thee, and awake that shall vex thee, and thou shalt be for booties unto them. Because thou hast spoiled many nations, all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee. Beautiful. Because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land of the city, and of all that dwell therein. See? So that's what's about to come to this place, man. Small hats, America, you know, this debt-based society, right? They spoiled many nations, man, you know? And now everything is about to backfire on this place, man. But that's really the point. I'm going to give all praises to Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shabbat Shalom Kakadash, ETA Baba Ball, Shalom.